Okay, let's just dive right into this explainer. Have you ever had that feeling where you just know more about someone than they're actually telling you? Well, you probably do. You just might not know exactly how to read the signs quite yet. Today, we're going to uncover how every single person you meet leaks their deepest secrets through this invisible trail of clues. They really don't mean to. In fact, they're desperately trying to hide behind their psychological armor. But we're going to learn how to see right through it. Friedrich Nietzsche once hit the nail on the head when he said, "Every profound spirit needs a mask." And what's really fascinating here is that he absolutely didn't mean this as an insult, not at all. It's actually a vital warning. It tells us to never confuse the heavy armor a person wears with the vulnerable, fragile soul underneath. Most people out there are just actors in a play they didn't even write. Their smiles, their loud opinions, their absolute certainty, it's really all just survival. To break down this whole survival mechanism, we're going to follow a clear path today. 1. The shields of virtue. 2. The shadows of insecurity. 3. The sounds of deception. And finally, 4. Seeing the pattern. If you miss even one of these chapters, you kind of lose the whole underlying framework, so definitely stay with me here. All right, Chapter 1, the shields of virtue, or using goodness as armor. Let's start by peeling back that really common outermost layer of human behavior. We're looking at exactly how people use supposedly good traits to shield themselves from some pretty deep emotional pain. I mean, we're all trained by society to see extreme politeness as this massive virtue, right? But here's the thing. The mask of excessive kindness very often hides a deep-seated fear of abandonment. When you see someone constantly tossing their own boundaries aside just to keep you comfortable, well, they aren't necessarily being a saint. Sadly, they're terrified. It's basically a performance of complete compliance just so you never ever have a reason to leave them. And that builds right into law number 4. We all know the type, right? The really loud moralist who is constantly correcting everybody else. Well, the mask there is loud morality, but the truth? It's the will to power in disguised vanity. That person loudly broadcasting their perfect ethics isn't actually motivated by love or care. They're using morality as a highly effective weapon. It's a shortcut. It literally allows an insecure person to feel completely superior without ever having to do the hard, messy internal work of actual growth. The absolute most crucial point here is beautifully simple. Real goodness is quiet. It has zero need for an audience or a round of applause. Genuine ethics and purity operate in total silence, completely free from that exhausting urge to constantly signal their presence to a crowd. So if someone is practically shouting about how good they are, you're looking at their armor, not their heart. Moving right along to Chapter 2, the shadows of insecurity, or the ego's echoes. Now we're going to dig a little deeper beneath that aggressive outward behavior to find the really scared child hiding just inside. To understand law number 2, we have to talk about a concept Nietzsche explored deeply, and that's projection. Projection is essentially hating the traits in others that threaten to expose our own buried shadows and insecurities. Just think about it. When you hear someone obsessively mocking arrogance or endlessly pointing out everyone else's dishonesty, listen closely. They're usually hiding a truth they haven't faced themselves yet. We don't just despise random traits in people. We despise the traits that actively threaten us. So, the mask of constant criticism is directly linked to the truth of battling personal insecurities. Here's a super practical takeaway for you. If you ever want to know what someone fears most about their own self-worth, just look at what they violently despise and mock in the world around them. It's exactly like they're holding up a mirror to their own flaws and just loudly complaining about the reflection. Let's take this straight into law number 6. The mask of acting superior hides the truth of overcompensating for inferiority. You see, true confidence doesn't compete. It doesn't brag, and it definitely doesn't need to suck all the oxygen out of the room just to dominate it. So whenever you see that superior act, just know you're witnessing pure psychology in motion. It is overcompensation, pure and simple. Keep an eye out for what I like to call the overcompensation toolkit. Titles, money, constant achievements, boasting. If someone is always reminding you of these things, look a little deeper. Because behind every corporate throne built with these tools, you're almost always going to find a terrified child wearing a crown. They're just desperate not to be overlooked and terrified of being found wanting. It totally changes how you view the most arrogant people in your life, doesn't it? All right, Chapter 3, the sounds of deception, which is the deepest layer. This is where we look at what people absolutely refuse to say, and how they actively lie to themselves just to survive. Law number 3 teaches us a really fascinating paradox. The mask is spoken language itself, while the truth is found in the pauses, the deflections, and the sudden silence. Language is often the ultimate tool of the herd, actively designed to disguise reality. But the truth? It always leaks out in the empty spaces. Watch for that sudden pause right before an answer. Notice the quick deflection when a conversation gets just a bit too real. When a deep question gets answered with a rehearsed, shallow punchline, well, their armor just took a hit. That avoidance tells you exactly where the wound is located. And that brings us to law number 5, the architecture of self-deception. It happens in steps. First, a painful reality occurs, but the fragile psyche just can't handle the weight of it. So a protective script is rehearsed until finally self-deception is completely achieved. People don't lie to you first, right? They lie to themselves. When someone says, "Oh, I'm totally over it," they're often rehearsing a script they desperately need to believe. So when someone's story really doesn't add up, don't immediately assume malice. You're probably just witnessing the internal architecture keeping their fragile psyche from breaking under the weight of reality. Finally, Chapter 4, Seeing the Pattern, going from reading minds to reading masks. Let's take a step back and look at what happens when you synthesize all these laws and actually start seeing the underlying framework of human interaction. Seeing the pattern means realizing the bully isn't strong. They're actually deeply fragile. The chronic cynic isn't wise. They're just wounded. And language itself is very often just a shield. When you walk into a room equipped with this understanding, something inside you kind of shifts. You no longer hear just sentences. You literally see the deep fragility and the unhealed wounds driving the behavior of everybody around you. You aren't reading minds anymore, you're reading the mask. But I really want to stress an absolutely crucial point here. This skill is a responsibility, it is not a weapon. Nietzsche didn't want you to see through people so you could manipulate them or feel vastly superior. He wanted you to see through them so you could just stop being fooled. When you finally understand why people act the way they do, you can actually offer them some grace. And perhaps just as importantly, you can protect your own peace. Before we wrap up this explainer, I want you to take a pretty hard look inward. Which of these laws did you recognize in your own reflection? You know, it's super easy to spot the masks on others, but what about the mask you are wearing? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments below, and let's get a real conversation going in a world that is frankly far too full of masks. If this explainer helped you see the world and maybe yourself with a bit more clarity, definitely make sure to subscribe. We've got so much more to uncover together, and you really won't want to miss it. So until next time, keep your eyes open and stay curious.